I've always wanted to become a lawyer, right from childhood. You know, those primary 7 S's where they'd say, what do you want to become and why? I always said, you know, law to defend human rights. I'm not saying I'm not defending human rights anymore, but I think now I know why I studied law. But I think along the way, you've read my story, I talk about it as much as I can, especially now, just to encourage people that the results don't always come out as expected. So along the way, when my P7 results, like I would excel during school, I was okay, and then time for exams, things would just go the other way, you know, totally. So along the way, I lost my confidence because I thought maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe the final results will come out and they are so bad. And for me, my determination was always my parents will not pay my school fees at university. So I wanted to go in government, so I said, okay, I can't put law as first choice. So I decided to put mass communication. Because the points were a little bit, you know, lower. And also my sister was, you know, is a great mentor in my life, and she was doing that, and it seemed like fun. So I've always wanted to do law, but I did not put that as first choice. But when the results came out and I had excelled, I was the best in Uganda, then it became, oh, where did you put it? What did you put? And I was like, mass comm. They're like, are you crazy? Like, I didn't know. Everyone is asking, where did you put land? They're like, you have not been where I've been. You did not see my senior 4 results. You did not see my P7 results. So luckily, I met a family friend at church, Pius. What's his again? The Pius.
That's Deputy Solicitor. No, not
this one. That's still young to have brother. He's the Pius. Oh my God. Yes, Biribonwoha, and was at Christ the King Church. So, you know, in Christ the King Church, everybody's, you know, they made me stand up and they were clapping for me and stuff. So after that, everyone is all talk to our children. We know they should see that from one of our children here, maybe the priest is preaching well. So he says, what are you going to study? What are you going to study? I said, mass comm. He said, no, you should do law. I said, because I've already considered it, went to my career, and they said, oh, if you have to change to law, you have to become private. They said, why? I got the points, you know. But, you know, policies are policies. So he's the one that guided us and said, actually, there is Dar es Salaam University. You could apply for a scholarship, and if you make it, sorry, it's the best, but if you make it, you can study there. So that's how I managed to get back and study law. But yeah, it's always been a dream. I just fell off the wagon a bit, but I'm so glad that I was able to get a chance to study it.
Okay. Thank you for that. So Makeri lost a really great lawyer.
I don't know about that.
Makeri sort of denied me as well. So they lost good lawyers.
They lost I'm really on that.
Mr. Elison, you can tell us what inspired you.
It is, first of all, I want to remember that it is not as inspiring as what we have just had. So, I have always wanted to be a lawyer. I thought the profession of law was a calling. I thought it was interesting. I watched very many lawyer movies. When we were younger, there was this guy called Perry Mason. I don't think you guys know Perry Mason. Used to be was one of the most least watched guys on UTV, but I used to watch him. UTV was UBC. So I've always had a desire to be a lawyer. I think that the choice to be a lawyer is becoming harder, of course, for many people, because there's so much. There used to be a very big difficulty. I think it was removed with, I think, pre-entries at LDC and things like that. And I always look back and say that if there had been pre-entry when we were doing law, I would probably have put mass comm as well. So I've always been, it has really always been something I've been looking forward to doing, and I can say that I've never regretted once being a lawyer.
Okay, some encouragement. I think we have all at some point maybe regretted choosing law. It's a long. What never happened to doing law school?
You see, law is the easiest subject in the university.
Is it? Those books and the precedents
you will never find somebody, except very rare, you find somebody who finished law school. Law is the easiest subject in the university.
I'd say it's the most profitable.
Even a donkey. All you have to know is what the statute says and what the judge said. And you can know that the night before the exam. So, I don't see how you can say you spend sleepless nights reading your no. Law is, without a doubt, the easiest subject in the universe. Just imagine the guys who do economics. They have all these variables, they have things. There are no variables in our thing. It is, was their offer? Is their acceptance? Is their intention to create legal relations? Is there a contract? It is science, but not hard science. So yeah, I always took the view that I wasn't intelligent enough to do other things.
Mr. Pius, if you could tell us what inspired you to pursue law.
Thank you. You know, I was looking to clear earlier that if you ask me the question last, I probably say I agree with that. But seriously, it's interesting that, you know, as Elison was speaking, I was like, oh no, what am I going to say? Because believe it or not, I also was inspired by the very same character. Wow. Mason. But I don't think by the time I decided to do law, I was thinking of doing good for society and, you know, going out there and serving people. No, I at the beginning I looked at it from the point of view, first of all, Perry Mason, very smart, the way he reasoned and, you know, got out of things. I read a lot as a young boy. I used to read so much, of course fiction. So it kind of grew on to me. By the time I was in Form 2, going to 3, and by that time it was very clear to me that I was not a mathematician. I was failing maths.
I hear you.
So the subjects in which I was excelling at the time were guiding me or projecting me towards doing law. But over time, I think I've come to recognize how using the law you can really make an incredible contribution to society. There's this belief in our society, in the societies we live in, that lawyers know everything. So when you leverage that, you are able to guide, you know, society in a certain direction. Mine has been in public service, unlike these two who make a lot of money in the private sector. And with time, it grows on you. Maybe we'll talk later about my career path right now. In the public service, the satisfaction you get from being able to champion a cause and shape it, and shape a destiny, is incredible. So I think it grew on me later that I could use the law to serve society. But at the beginning, I thought lawyers were very smart, they were intelligent, they were very rich. I've not achieved much of that, but yeah, that's how I chose law. It was the ability, the fictitious characters that I was reading, and then my grades, and that's how I studied law.
I think after we need to go and look at Perry Mason.
Yeah, actually, I think I'm going to look up this particular character and revisit these particular movies. Personally, my law career, actually, the education was also inspired by some fictitious character in a particular legal series. But then what I'm interested to know from you, gentlemen and lady, is what then was the turning point? Because I believe at a particular point while you're pursuing the legal education, you then get I think another character to inspire you. I have colleagues who find inspiration from some of the judges sitting in our courts, some of the advocates, and what I'm interested Yes.
Yeah.
I think what would interest us now is to know who, particularly from the legal career, then inspired you, gentlemen and lady, to take on with the whole lawyering and everything. I don't know. I think we should start with the lady again.
No. Why?
Then I can agree with it.
Can we start with Pius this time?
I don't know. I was actually scratching my head as you asked that. But it depends from which angle. From the smartness in terms of the brains at the university you had the lecturers. But I think the people that have had an impact on me and on my character to some extent are people like the former Chief Justice. I remember when I was young, he had traveled to a country where one of my parents was at the time. And then he brought something, he carried something for me, and I had to go to his office to pick it. But his, I think he was then Attorney General. His demeanor, his calmness, his making me sign for what I was receiving. I think it had an impact, and I started following how he went about doing his work. Very impactful for me. Then there was a gentleman in the East African law and East African Legislative Assembly, EALA, and the East African Community. He was the counsel to the community, the Attorney General of East Africa, a gentleman called Karuhanga. He was extremely intelligent, but very calm. He was always very calm, no matter what. He was always very calm. So I think in terms of character, those are the people who shaped my understanding and the practice of the law. But I think you cannot, in my view, you cannot have that one person a long time ago who inspires. I think we're inspired every day. Yeah. Every day. I mean, today I'm definitely going to pick something from the people I've interacted with. I will get a trait, I will admire it, I'll go and practice. You know, maybe next time I'll say, Mr. Zavga didn't put on a tie and he was looking very sharp. So I think learning is continuous, and people inspire you every day. You know, when you listen to Elison on radio, TV, defending EACOP, you get inspired. So you always pick those traits from those individuals that you meet along the way. So it's never, for me, that there was that one person and then that one person. But you learn so much from different people. I mean, for example, from the president, you learn discipline and what you can get from discipline if you are very concise and you focus on something and you keep going at it. So that would be my answer, a convoluted answer to the question that you asked.
Mr. Elison, did you have one person who inspired you, or maybe similar to Mr. Pius, where it was a continuous sort of inspiration from various people?
I grew up in the home of a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the son of a lawyer.
Prominent lawyer, please. It was my former boss.
I'm the son of her former boss. So definitely I was inspired at home. It would be not, I wouldn't be telling you the truth if I did not say that my father had a very serious impact on my decision to become a lawyer, and acted and continues to act as a great inspiration to me as a lawyer. Of course, generally, I am also always impressed with very many legal figures, including the former Chief Justice, who was at that time also Claire's former boss.
I have had the privilege of working with fine gentlemen.
Former Claire's former boss. There is a lot there are very many people who have been very inspirational. The people you've worked with, and you are very, very impressed. Some are slightly older than us. One of the great inspirations actually is the current Attorney General, who I have worked with on a number of things, and I have found his mind to be quite incredible in terms of the law. Not just in terms of the law, also in other things, but really in terms of the law, I have found him to be very, very intelligent and inspiring and hardworking and driven. And I think generally there are a number of lawyers who act as inspiration, and even some judges. And I could tell you very many stories about very many lawyers that did very many things in court, but this thing is on camera, so, so maybe I'll stop there.
Okay.
I want to know how your law experience was like, especially for the two of you that studied your bachelor's abroad. Was it what you expected? Yeah.
Answer the previous question, then I can loop in with that. So you ask who inspired us, who inspired me to become a lawyer. Do you know? Okay, first, the reason I keep mentioning my former boss is because I'm very proud of the people that I have worked with. And like most people these days, and we're talking about Africa's future, lawyers, it's important for you to know, even as you study. People, there's this whole, you remember that on social media, like, oh, if someone does this to me, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, red flag, like, who cares about you? Like, my boss talks to me, I don't know what, that's a red flag. You're a boss, you're even lucky you have a boss. So I am very privileged that I worked with some of, just be looking at them like this, because you've read about these people, but you just did not think that you could, work with them.
Yes.
The way they carry themselves, clients would come in and they're panicking, and this man is calm. You yourself, you are, he is calm, like, do not rush me. And I think some of the lessons that I've picked from them I've carried on even in practice. Okay, today we are not wearing suits, and Pius made us look bad by coming in a suit. But ordinarily, one of the standards I've set for myself is I don't really dress down. My partner now, who is young and in your generation, says Friday we all have to dress down. So I try to dress down. But sometimes look at, is that your dress down? And they're like, yeah, I'm not wearing a coat. But because I look at it, and you will never find anyone dressed, I don't know, in a t-shirt on a Tuesday. Or like, they're always smart. So then why do you think that you have to drop the ball and walk in, I don't know, in some dress because you are the managing partner and stuff? So we copy from people like that. So that's why when they mention my bosses, I'm like, that's my former boss, because I learned so much from them. They've inspired me along the journey. And like Pius says, you get inspired every day. You look at something and say, I'm going to be like that. I'm going to pick that. Yeah. So along the way, who has inspired me? One, I don't do inspiration very well. Let's of Whitney Houston. You guys were young. What's the song? Children are the future. There is a part in, do you know it?
I think I know it.
You know that song? I love that. I've loved that song for a very long time. There's a part in there when she says, I decided long ago that never to walk in anyone's shadows.
Yeah.
If I fail, if I succeed, at least I know I believe, like, no matter what they take from me, they can't take away my dignity. That song, I don't know why I loved it, but for me it's always been, people say, oh, my hero, I don't know why. You follow one person and the day they fall off. It's like when you have your pastor, then tomorrow there's a scandal, like you're left scattered, like how I think Jesus left people, and people were like scattered, like that's the leader we've been following all these years, and now he's been arrested, like where do we even start from? So I don't really do that. I will pick and say I admire this person's word, but I will not follow you closely, because tomorrow when they get in a scandal, you may shatter my everything, you may even shatter my career. I know people who lost their faith because of, their leaders were caught in certain scandals. So I don't follow people, like I don't tie on people that much, I am my own heroine, not to brag, but I push myself, like, you have to do this, you have to achieve the highest standards, according to me. But the one person that I've always loved is Justice Julia Sevutinde. Do you know her?
Yes.
Puts her makeup, what? And then she appears. And this one time, I think when I actually started following her, she was doing a probe, I think it was URA. Do you remember that Pius, you would remember it, and Elison? And then there were also these policemen, and then they would come before. I don't say that I like to see men cry, but men were crying. I was like, this small, she was a lady judge already. First of all, she's doing her makeup. People have this thing of, if you're very serious in some professions, you're supposed to be so plain. I don't know, wearing skirts up. Not Julia Sebutinde, no, please. She will keep her femininity, intact, but she will take you on, and I love that about her. I love that so much. And she's gone on to, sit at higher courts, and I look up to her. I had the opportunity of meeting her at Uganda Law Society. They organized something, and she was a chief guest that time when she was a judge. And I wrote a card and, did something for her, and, she acknowledged me. It was really nice. Considering that when I was going to do my master's, I had to write an essay, and they asked, who inspires you? And I wrote about Justice Julia Sebutinde. And I got a scholarship because of that. Yes, it's very personal. But I think that's about it, and the inspiration along my career, my law journey.
Did you get a chance to tell her you wrote the essay about her?
I don't know, I was shaking so much. I was looking at me, she's like, but I wrote all that in the card because I knew I was not going to have enough time with that, but I did write all that in the card. So, yeah, she's been a great inspiration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So, sorry for interrupting you, by the way.
No?
Back to my question. I wanted to know what your law experience was like, if it was what you expected, especially for the two of you having done it from abroad, as well as Lisa.
So I did my university, like I told you, from University of Dar es Salaam. It was a great change. First of all, they instruct in English, but when the lecturer says, maybe turn to your neighbor, I don't know do what, they start Swahili. My God, it was such a challenge. But it pushed me to learn Swahili so fast because, if they've put you in groups and then they're saying discuss and present, you can be sure that even no one is going to discuss in English. So if you, it was, people are like, sasa tufanyaje, utaongea. You're like, God, English please. Hey, we are doing Swahili. Okay, let's try. So we shall talk, and then tutafanya, like, but English. So it was a bit of a challenge, the whole language barrier and everything. But then again, it pushed me to step up and say, okay, if I'm going to pass, if I'm going to meet my classmates, then I need to localize, for lack of a better word. But it was a very good experience. I can't say that it was really different because the law is the law and it's also Commonwealth. So, not sure what angle you want to come from, but it was a good experience. And from there, then came back to do, law from Uganda. It was a bit challenging because some laws are totally different. Yeah. Like, for example, land law in Tanzania, the government owns the land. And, it was so hard to comprehend. Then you come to Uganda, I don't know, my law, man. But again, it's the character, like he says, once you have certain things in place, you can fit in anywhere. We've seen Ugandans who have excelled in different, I'm sure you've seen those Ugandans who are doing so well. Is it Kata and where? So, then again, once you have the principles, you can excel anywhere. You can excel anywhere.
What was the studying like? Were you able to pick up with the reading? Was it a walk up like Mr. Elison?
So it's just making us look bad. It's so not easy. Like you read everything, okay, no, one. But the difference, I think, for me with Dar es Salaam, University of Dar es Salaam and Makerere is Dar es Salaam was mostly about principles. Like okay, this is law of contract, these are principles and stuff. So then you're arguing, you're like, okay, cases have said this and this, but now there's what? So the current position is this. Welcome to LDC. People are starting, in the case of what? Over 19, what? They quote the year, they quote the judge. I'm like, whoa, do we have to do that here? And then they have kings, I don't know if so and so, that people would even present to a person, I've written this and this, you've failed. I'm like, that kind of thing. It was not there in Dar es Salaam. There it was mostly, but here I think, I don't know about other universities, but at least what I saw at LDC, they emphasize, I don't want to say there's a lot of cramming, but I think there's a lot of cramming. Like, just get the principle and understand it so that you can argue it, because And that's why people struggle at LDC. Like you're trying to ask someone, I'm an external examiner there, we have orals next month, all the best to you guys. But you're asking someone a question, and you want to be like, okay, what is this? What's your... Actually, it's like a whole case study, and you would want someone to apply themselves. No. The person is focused on telling you the section, and you're like, forget the section. Tell me what is in the section, and attach it to case law, and then I'll understand that you've understood it. Because, they say good lawyers are not the ones who, you know the law, you know what the law is. I don't want to know the section, and just tell me what is there and how the law treats that principle. So I think that was a bit of a difference, and maybe even in our teaching, if we could just emphasize that, so that people are not just cramming, which judge said what, which one. Those are not necessary. I think the principle is what matters. But that was the difference that I found. But either way, you have to cope because you have to pass. Yes. There is no way around that.
And I think you did more than cope, because you ended up being the best student at LDC.
Yes. Yes, I was the best student at LDC. It was yes, I did study hard. I studied so hard because when I went to LDC, to be honest, LDC, so I think it's a bit like medicine. Previously, your degree would not, but these days I saw they attached that. You would it was just the top 3, and then the rest would pass, which was okay, because you don't want to walk into your and you're like, dude, you were like the last in the class. You were the second last, but so it was always pass. And I told the same with doctors that, doctors, you pass. So okay, my doctor passed, were you the third? So it was the same with LDC. So I got in there, I'm like, what? Please, like, let's. It was my same year mates were in senior 6, so they're like, oh, we've been waiting for you. You escaped to Dar es Salaam. So I'm like, let's just pass good, like, together kuswala, And then, I think it was like day 4, some guy who is now my friend and told me to stop putting his name in my stories. Because this is from he came to me and said, you're Claire Amanya. I'm like, yeah. He's like, you survived that. We are going to show you. I looked at the guy like, it's just else, and he's like, we are going to show you. There was some guy who was supposed to be the best up, but he left Budo. You people, the guy had such beef. I looked at him, and all of a sudden, it was not enough to pass. Because then it seemed like I had fluked senior 6. Like, you literally just fluked being the best, but LDC, we are going to show you. Oh, guys in Makerere, so the guy unleashed beef on me, and I was like, okay. So he's like, we have been waiting for you. Let's see how you perform at LDC. Let's see if you win again. Sat down and they told God, we are going to be embarrassed. This changes everything. We cannot just read. Now we have to pass. So I read like a mad person. I had all these things, and how to read. I'd go home like strictly Sunday afternoon. Saturday the whole time was read, because I would start. Remember, I didn't even have papers. I didn't have notes for Uganda law system. So I'd start the week not knowing what, civil procedure here, not knowing anything. But by the end of the week, trust me, I was discussing for people because I was putting in so much. But it was not easy. It was really trying. It was a really trying time. Yeah.
Mr. Elison, if you could also talk to us about, I know Kathy was asking your law school experience, but also if you could just mention how maybe certain people think that Ugandan law schools are not pushing out as quality lawyers as schools abroad. And I think one of the issues, as Madame Claire talked about, was the cramming. And I think I speak on behalf of all of us, that's still something that's here now. Like, you have to know the section, at least
Like you want to have photographic memory.
Yeah, you have that photographic memory. So could you compare the two, and do you think Ugandan law schools are losing their touch and should shift?
Okay, so it is of course true that that law schools abroad have a lot of resources, for example, that are not available to law schools here. But frankly and honestly, I do not agree with the very orthodoxy and the collective opinion that Ugandan law schools do not churn out good lawyers. I personally and honestly don't agree. I think that if you get judges, Ugandan judges, for example, and see how they perform on an international stage. You talked about Julia Sebutinde. Just look at the judges who are right now sitting in Arusha. Look at the judges who sit at the African Court on Human and People's Rights. Look at the people who go and serve in international tribunals. I do not think that they beat us in any respect. I have been involved in very big cases in Uganda. I have, for example, been involved in presidential election petitions, and I have watched presidential election petitions in Kenya, and other countries. I cannot say in all fairness that the lawyers there are better than the lawyers here. Coming back to the law schools, I look at the law schools in two ways. First of all, I look at our time. I didn't go to law school here, as you know. I went abroad. I came back, I went to LDC. Everything you've said about LDC is very polite.
Baptism of fire.
LDC was and absolutely is and was a baptism of fire, and there were many things at LDC that I can say, and many things I'm reading about LDC now that frankly I found concerning. But when I look at our time, when we got out of law school, I went and worked in DFCU Bank, and my boss then, who was a great inspiration actually, was Agnes Tibaita, who is now Corporation Secretary of NSSF. Seen what's happening there, but but they don't comment on that. But so when you write a letter and give it to Agnes, it would come back colored. There were so many things, starting from the first sentence to the last one. There was a correction. So basically, she had become a supervisor and a teacher. So you write and everything of yours is changed. They ask you for legal work, and what you produce as legal work cannot be said to be. When I look back at how we started off, and then I look at the many people who pass through our law firms these days, I can't say that our lot was better. I think we were worse.
That's not true.
I promise you.
That's not
when I look back, my own view, I don't know what Pius thinks. When I look back, of course there are many differences. First of all, I don't think we had Yuli.
Which made it even harder because we had to
We didn't have Yuli, so maybe we couldn't research. Because now, someone comes with a case. I really thought, of the first time when I took my boss a case that really solved the problem.
Yeah.
So I accept that there are many challenges, that as pressures rise, as costs of education go up, as more students come into place, as teachers get tired, as there's pressure on law schools, there's pressure on the legal career. When you come out, what do? There's there are things of many people sacrificing so much to be lawyers, and the fear that at the end of the day you just may not enter LDC, and then if you do enter LDC there's a very good chance that you just may not finish, and if you finish there's a very good chance that you just may not work, and if you work there's a very good chance that you just may not prosper. So there's a very good chance.
So when you say that,
there's a very good chance throughout the stage of the legal business that is going to be tough. But
can I stop you right there? When you say that, and you then not, because we are speaking to Africa's future leaders, and when you put it that way, is there not then a problem that people think that just because you studied law, then you have to work, in a law firm, you have to remain a lawyer? Isn't that then the problem that all these people think? I have to be in court. But remember the likes of the late Dr. Kagugube and others. He was, but a lawyer as well.
Yes, my former boss also, Jimmy, Willie Ogule.
Yes.
At DFCU.
Yes, I remember.
Very many transaction lawyers. Lawyers who have done 101 things. And I accept what you're saying. What I'm saying is that when you look at, because the question was, do I think that Ugandan law schools are churning out less quality graduates? I have seen that has been said. But I don't agree with it. I don't want to say controversial things, but was it last year?
Yeah.
There was a fight between some students and a certain legal academic institution.
Say it, LDC.
And I think the students won. How do you call guys? How do you say that is something else? In our time, who would have complained and complained? Who?
How?
But so how do you then say that? I don't know.
The students are tougher.
Students are tougher. So I wouldn't say. Well, about the education, of course, the fact is that I think when you start, one of the books that really inspired many lawyers was Glanville Williams' book, Learning the Law, where he says about exams that exams are a formidable foe, because even the dumbest man can ask more than the wisest man can answer. And so that's part of the challenge of legal education. They still and will always remain a formidable foe. So once you go through that whole process, my thinking, I don't accept the orthodoxy that the students now are worse than the students before. What I do know is that there's a wider pool of students as well. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, UPE had been in Uganda for 4 years. I think, am I right? UPE came in 1996. So 23 years ago, the first UPE student was in P4. Yeah? Now I think there are very many people who have gone through mass education. Many of them who become lawyers. So there used to be this story, and then they also opened up the subjects. When we were doing law, there were very specific subjects, I think. I don't know what it is now, that you needed to study to be able to do law. You couldn't do PCM.
True.
Yeah, arts subjects.
Very specific ones.
It's actually open now.
It's open now, yeah?
It's
Like
open
you
now.
can study anything as long as you pass pre-entry.
Yes.
So there was a limit to who could come in. Now, of course, one very senior person told me that, you see, when you go to teach these days, you ask someone to discuss the principle of abandonment in criminal law. And he tells you, but I think that variety, I think, has actually made it richer. I know there are many people who think it has made it poorer, but I don't accept the orthodoxy that it has made it poorer. And I hope I've answered your question long enough to survive the next one.
So, Mr. Pius, from the perspective of someone who went to a Ugandan law school, do you think that the material you went to, however many years ago, compared to now, do you think it's the same quality?
I want to approach it from this angle. I agree with Elison and Claire that it's not necessarily true that the foreign educated lawyers are necessarily better than our lawyers. In fact, I think, if I remember, at one time somebody did do some studying that the Ugandans who have studied from here and go and do masters, they always excel in whatever field.
Yes.
But I want to contextualize it. I think, of course, as not an employer, but somebody who has supervised lawyers, and you see them, I think there's a little bit of work that we can do to improve the focus of students. As Elison was speaking, I was just trying to remember, and I think there was a wave. At some point, there was a bit of a dip, for sure, in the quality that was coming out of law school, where, as you said, your boss at DFCU was coloring all your paper, because honestly, you'd get a brief from a lawyer, and you'd get so frustrated. And at that time, I remember calling the Dean Faculty of Law Dr. Locke, and I was saying, you know, the quality is a bit, it's a bit shaky. So I'm saying it was a wave, but now I think this current generation, they're incredible. Recently we got a whole lot from, you know, coming in the Ministry of Justice, young people, and they're really brilliant. They're really brilliant. When I was walking up with Mr. Zavuga, I was asking him, so at what level are you at now at school? And he said he was in second year. And I tried to think back. I said, yeah.
On a Saturday afternoon.
You know, so I think currently we are getting better people, but I think we can do better. When I went to do my master's, I'd been working for about, I think, 6 years. No, not master's, actually I went on an exchange program. I went to work in the office of the Attorney General in Dublin, Ireland for some months. And, you know, I think at that time I had senior to my title, senior legal counsel. So they arranged for me to meet some students who are fresh from university, you know, University of London, Oxford, and I think one from Edinburgh. And we had a discussion. But my God, these kids were intimidating me. The level of depth they had. So I think we can improve, and I think you said something interesting that I picked up. Principles versus cramming.
Yes.
I don't know how it is in the private sector, but in the space where I have been operating, you get notice of less than 10 minutes to go for a meeting, okay? I worked in Parliament for about 14 years as head of legal, so I interacted directly with the Speaker. So they would call you, just get a phone, oh please come in, the Speaker is calling you. You had no idea what they were calling you about, so you haven't prepared, you haven't read. And then you enter a room and they're not him, but they're the Elisons, the experts in the oil sector. And the Speaker is arguing with them and saying, Mama Pius, what is your opinion? Now, if you are somebody who is crying, you struggle to be able to do that. So you have to internalize. And I'm saying this because I recognize we are speaking to, you know, students and what they think they can do. You need to internalize the principles, I think. I know I said even, I don't know what they do in the private practice, but you have to be able to think on your feet, and you have to be able to give solutions. You know, when they're in court, the judge can say, no, address me on this one. On this issue that you did not cram the night before. So you're not going to tell the judge, that's unfair, you ask me about what I read. So I think the education system had a dip, but I think now it's the quality I'm seeing from my perspective. I think we are getting some really very good young lawyers coming out of the various law schools. You know, it doesn't matter whether it's Makerere or elsewhere. That would be my response. I don't know if I've answered your question.
No, you have. So I think the three of you are in the consensus that we have a chance against students study abroad, right?
Definitely.
Definitely. Only maybe if I could add what you said, I took out something. And I recognize that we are with Pius, Deputy Solicitor, don't report me. But we study for way too long here. You know, like, but you get out. Okay, go. How old are you right? Second year. Sorry to put you on the spot.
22.
22, right? And you're in second year. Guys, by 22, we should be done with law school. I did my master's and I recognize that, you know, I was helped a lot along the way. But after 4 years, you know, Dar es Salaam, then you come back another year at LDC, right? When I was doing my master's, I was 26. And to me, I was like, yo, I've done my master's. And I'd worked with KA before. And they said, okay, go study, come back, your place is here. So according to my peers, and by now you agree with 26, you're still young to do your master's from a leading university, you know, UCL in London. Guys, we got there. Me and my friend, my Indian friend, were the oldest in the class. I was 26, she was 27. We were looking at kids like, really? You know, young kids, very sharp. But most of them, the average age was 22. And others had just done, you know, like a first master's at LSE, London School of Economics, and now they were getting their second master's at UC. And I'm like, 22. By 22, you're in second year, right? You still have a long way to go. You still got 2 years there. You're going to do LDC. You know, you hope and pray nothing messes you around there. So by the time you're done, so there's a problem there, you know. And even when you look at other countries like India, and in other degrees, it's not even just law. By a certain age, people are done with school. Either pursuing masters or they're working. You know, by like 22, someone is working already, and that means it gives you, you know, leeway. Imagine for us females, if you're done 26, you know, at that time they're already saying, bring a man, you know. Then you're thinking, you know, my eggs also, how much time do I have to produce? So before you know it, when you're just starting out to, you know, to study, to work or something like that, 27, you know, you get some man, then they start saying, bring a kid. 28, you're giving birth. What? How are you going to grow your career at 28? At 28, let me tell you, ladies, we are so disadvantaged. At 28, I was working in KA, and I don't even want to hold anything against those, you know, the gentlemen. But if you have a client, and the client wants their work, you know, it's an international firm, so they're saying, oh, London needs this. Meanwhile, the instructions have come in like at 4 p.m. London needs this before close of business. You know, depending on the time. I know it from football. I don't know in what. They're 3 hours ahead, then they come to us. If they're 3 hours behind, that means for them they're still working. You at 4, 5 you're preparing to leave. Now who want to you silly girl? At 5 you're holding your bag because they told you your working hours are 5. You're working with guys. It's a competitive world out there. Nobody's going to tell you, but if you don't get yourself switched on, you're dead. You know, so the guy will be told, the two of you are there, London needs this before this time, or the boss is like, we are presenting tomorrow. It's up to you to understand that don't leave until you're done with the work. It doesn't matter whether it's 5 or 6 stay. Now you're a girl, you're 28, you've probably just gotten married or in a serious relationship, and you're like, I have to go home and cook, or, you know, my husband needs me to go home. The guy, you know, working is like, yo, let's do this. Rolls up his sleeves and sits and puts in the hours, you know, and leaves like at 7 or 8. You left at 5. Tell me who they're going to retain.
The guy.
You stand no chance. You stand no chance. So unless you have like a supportive partner who even encourage you and say, you know, work, impress, but that's also the best time, because don't tell me that after you're done giving birth at 34 that you're going to come back to the legal field. You'll meet these young sharp people and they're asking, how old are you? And which position do you want? Associate legal assistant. They're like, how? You understand? You have more baggage than this person. So the years we study here are, you know, in addition to our education system somehow, but the time we spend in class is a disadvantage to us. It is a disadvantage to us.
I think I agree with you, because I have a friend of mine who graduated at the same time, but she went to study in the UK, and she's now finishing third year. She's actually going to do her master's, and I'm still in second year. So, Mr. Pius, as our government representative, they can change it to 3 years, because Uganda's legal sector is actually so heavily influenced by the UK's. So I don't know, how did we end up with 4 years and 3 years?
Actually, I don't recall what the thinking was at the time. I did 3 years.
Oh, you did 3 years?
Yeah.
It used to be 3 years actually.
It was 3 years, and then it was changed to 4 years. So one would have to go back and ask why they moved from 3 to 4 years. By the way, it could have a relationship with what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
That maybe there was a feeling the quality had. Yeah, and they needed to keep them at law school for a year longer.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I think that we put so much pressure on ourselves to get a first-class degree, and I have the same thing, because we want to strive for excellence. Being on this side of the table and seeing you all, we're like, wow, they're amazing, they're successful. Do you think you need a first-class degree to be successful in law?
No.
Really?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You got a
No, please continue.
The question is yours, Pius.
No, I don't
agree.
think so.
I agree.
But it's always important to excel.
Right.
To excel, because Life is very interesting. Right now you are in law school, but at some point you'll ask yourself, did I really do the best that I could have done? I remember I had that feeling. For me, at university, I lived. I had the work-life balance. I didn't...
More life than work.
Because my classmates had me here saying that, I was very serious in the library. I'm sure they would all stone me and say, Pius, you're telling a lie. But towards the end, as the results start coming in, and as I left law school, I had that niggly thing behind me, said, but Pius, did you do the best? Could you have done better? The unfortunate thing, you can now not go back and say, I want to do law school again.
Sure.
I mean, that is past. So, but that inspired me when I went to do my master's. I said, but surely these people, my classmates who excelled, are they more clever than I am, or, So, in order not to regret, you try to do the best you can.
For sure.
You really do the best you can. But not that I must get a first class or I must get which class. Yeah, I would approach it more from you must learn as much as you can if you are going to enjoy practicing the law. You really must learn. Otherwise you'll get challenged in front of your clients.
True.
Yeah. True. Or you'll go to a meeting with very senior government officials, and you'll make a fool of yourself because it will be something that you should have known that you don't know. So the answer again, I'll go back. I know Claire probably doesn't agree with me, that my view is you don't have to have a first class.
Why do you think I don't agree with you?
You really don't.
You don't need to have a first
Try
class.
to be the best that you can for your personal peace of mind, for your future workplace. You never want to be there and regret and say, I wish I had worked a little bit harder. Maybe I could have, maybe I could have. So that would be my answer to your question. But I go back to no, you don't have to have a first class.
And I'm curious to hear what Ms. Claire has to say
I
about that,
totally agree. because let's hear it
because you are one of the best in your LDC.
Yes, I was.
You're
Was the
female,
best.
so you have to attain for excellence. I feel that when you defend the first class and you have it, you're able to say, I did that and I was successful. Even more so that you're female, you're competing with men, not to say, but you have to be a pillar of success. And you have so many women looking up to you, especially the fact that you're in the law field. So you want to say, I had a first class degree, I was successful, and I'm a woman in power.
I get accused so much of being a feminist, and it's not a
I'm not really a feminist, like,
I have friends that I'm always like,
to up my game and defend women a bit more. But to be honest, like sometimes I will come in, like when they say S6 results, but like, oh, you are the best girl. I'm like, no, please. Boys and girls come, I was the best student. Like, yeah, okay. Because people have this thing, in sports they do it, which is okay, where, females run their own race and males run their own race. Then you have people like Amanya, they're like, where are you? Things like that. But in practice and in education, I mean, you are going to get taught the same way. And you do the same exams. Maybe what disadvantages ladies is because we have this feeling of we're not as good as men. Men can, bluff on, and my panel is, I'm not talking, like I'm just addressing her question. Right? No, seriously, a study was done, and I'll never forget, the lecturer will say this and say that in a class, they did a study where the lecturer went and started talking, like if you're doing second year, and he decides to teach something, maybe on a PhD level. And the results that were taken of ladies were thinking, oh my God, I am so dense, I don't understand what this guy is saying. And you know what guys were thinking? there's something wrong with this guy. How come I don't understand what he is teaching? Goes to show you that we put ourselves down a lot more than men do. Even though usually we are, we are more hardworking than than they are. Do we need a first class? I think that success and excellence is as a result of things that you're doing. You don't necessarily set out to say, I'm going to get a first class. But when you have some principles, and like he said, if you give it the best that you've got, most likely you're going to get the best. Most likely you're going to get a first class, There's a saying that I landed on years ago, but it has always worked for me. It has guided my life. It's by a certain gentleman called Somersault. It says that there's a funny thing. It's a funny thing about life. If you very often expect the best, if you demand the best, you very often get it. If you demand excellence from yourself and mediocrity is not for you at all in all your life, you very often get it. And that goes for studies as well, because you are going to be giving it your best. You're going to be saying, you know what, okay, I don't know what I get, but I'm going to study. I'm going to do discussion groups. I am going to focus here. And your results will be a result of the effort you put in. That's a Bible principle. You cannot go wrong with that. You reap what you sow, right? I think what I've found with many students of these days, and I'm not judging, please do not, I don't know, things you say, what, toxic.
Red flag.
Don't red flag. But I think people fail to appreciate the law of seasons. I say this when I was talking to students who are going to LDC. People who go to LDC, they have told you it's a baptism of fire. They have told you what to expect. Then you want to maintain your social life. Like, please, respect it. You understand what I mean? Respect it and know this is LDC. Get in there. Do the time. It's just like 9 months literally, of almost like as if you're giving birth. A few months, just get in there, forget about everything else. You know what I mean? And just give it your best. If you have to sleep in a tiny room, I don't know, down where, stay there. You don't have to come from home. I can't stand this. My bitch, this is not for me. What do you guys say is this? I was not born to suffer. Let me let them say. You're giving someone else like, I was not born to suffer. Like, who was born to suffer? Neither was I, but we want the good results. So I don't believe that you need a first class. I did not get a first class. So annoying. As soon as the first day of University of Dar es Salaam, they walk in and the guy goes like, oriented like, welcome to law school. I don't know, University of Dar es Salaam is the best university. I'm going like, yeah, right. And I said, no, all your chief justices in Uganda were from here. I don't, all that word. Then he says, and by the way, we don't give first classes here. You guys. I was like, what do you mean? I've just come from where I have to go back with the first class. But it's like, do whatever you get. I see in University of Dar es Salaam is equivalent to an A in. I will not say. That's what the guy said. And he said, we've not given a first class here in the last 14 years. And they were taking pride in that. You guys, it was such a letdown. I was like, I need a first class. But after you understand and the way they teach you, like, I'm going to be a good lawyer anyway. And I'll just focus on, excellence, putting the hours. And it shows later. So no, you don't need a first class, but you need good results. Because if you're going to study abroad, and I will tell you, guys, if you're going to get in those best universities in the world, you cannot enter with a second hour. The bad part is some of the things they don't tell you. It's when you're finished, you have your degree, then they're like, oh, and you're like, now I go back and luckily I think at my career you have that opportunity to redo a paper if you got less grades, right? I think so. Retake, because even when you didn't retake it, you can. I was like, what? Like if you don't like the grades, you go back and study, then they increase. I've never heard of that anywhere, but it's a good thing. But if you have to look at the university you want to do your masters in, check their qualifications, because some of them, like for even Oxford, you have to have a first class. Yes. So already that cuts you out. You understand? Okay, now what's the next one? Because there's a whole universities ranking worldwide, and it's best to always study it, because we don't have that knowledge. You hear of a university, it sounds nice. No, you hear University of Birmingham, you're like, Birmingham. But your results can get you into UCL or LSE, or you know what I mean? Yeah. So you get the university rankings and say, according to law, these are the university rankings. So I want to get into that. What are their requirements? Then you start working towards that. So it kind of guides you. But no, you don't need a first class, but you do need good grades. Yes.
Mr. Elison, if we can go back to the comparisons between abroad universities and universities here in Uganda. I did a year actually at King's College London, and then I moved to UCU. So in my shift to UC, I could see so many cases, or like UK cases. In criminal law, like my American College book, that was enough for me. All the cases were there. It was the same cases. In contract law, it was the same cases. It was only in constitutional law, and administrative law that were somehow different. So, Mr. Elison, do you think it should, 6 years after independence, should Uganda's law sector still be so similar to the UK's? Or is it time for reformation of our own cases? Because another thing I noticed was that in criminal law, there were some cases that the UK had actually evolved from, but in Ugandan criminal law... Exactly. Exactly. I don't know how you read my mind. Marital rape in 1998, the UK, marital rape is not illegal in the UK, but in Uganda it's still illegal, and we're still using UK cases for our justification. So, do you think? I think it's time for reformation. Do you agree?
Yes, and but I don't think it's as clear cut as you've put it. The Constitution of Uganda provides in Article 126, Clause 2, that the courts of Uganda, in interpreting the laws of Uganda, can interpret them in accordance with the norms, aspirations, and wishes
of the people
of Uganda, and cultures. According to the norm, culture, aspirations of the people of Uganda. So, as a starting point, there are very many aspects of English law, of English common law, that we borrow within Uganda. In England, they always boasted about what they called the eternal youth of the common law. They said that the common law was always young. And their argument was that if society grows faster than the law, it will be bad for both. If the law is behind and the society is ahead, it will be bad. And if the law is ahead and the society is behind, it will be bad. So, there are very many aspects of common law. Although the difference is a lot of our law is codified. Yeah? So, for example, the principle in Wilmington versus DPP, that there is a golden thread that runs through the law of evidence, and that a person is presumed innocent until proven guilty. For us, it's not a question of... You saw what happened in America with abortion, where 50 years ago the court said something, and 50 years later the Supreme Court said something else. For us, the principle of presumption of innocence is constitutional. And not only is it constitutional, it is entrenched. Is it entrenched? No. Fair trial is entrenched. But the principle of presumption of innocence is really part of the fair trial process. So, is our law exactly the same? I'm not so sure that it is. What it is, though, is that there are a lot of things. Take, for example, commercial transactions. The UK, the global, what London has done extremely well from a policy point of view is turn London into a commercial, what do you call it, city. So there's what they call the City of London. I don't know if you know the City of London.
Yes, we do.
Not London, the capital city of the UK, but the City of London.
No, I don't think so.
So the City of London are the banks and the law firms. There's a small place there in the UK.
Yeah, Canary Wharf.
Canary Wharf, yeah.
Called the City of London. And in the City of London, they have their Lord Mayor. The term Lord Mayor, the Mayor of London is not called the Lord Mayor. It's only the Mayor of the City of London and the Mayor of Kampala who are referred to as the Lord Mayor. And in this small little kingdom, commerce happens, so much so that a lot of global commerce passes through the UK on account of English law. So you find that even when you're doing big contracts, many people will tell you, Pius can confirm that many of the investors who come here say they want English law.
English law.
Yeah.
They want English law. So the principles of English law, the principles of contract, the principles of commerce, the principles of fair play, the interpretation, the complex nature with which common law has developed, is not something we should quickly abandon, not because of any colonial history, but because of a lot of commercial practicality. that entrenches. However, overall, you are right. The law needs. They say that was it Jesus? I think it was Jesus. You shall correct me if I'm wrong.
Continue.
But I believe it was Jesus, the Lord Himself, who said that the man was not made. Was the Sabbath made for man, or was man made for the Sabbath? Either it was somewhere I read it, or it was Jesus who said it.
Jesus, yeah.
The law has to be made for the society, and it must be practically tailored towards the needs of the people. We have the challenge here that many times the law is either behind or ahead of the population, and it is definitely bad for both. So yes, there must be a level of reform which takes. I mean, we have that penal code. There's a section there. I don't want to say it. You know the section?
Which one?
I think it's code.
Which one? Don't tell me adultery. That criminalizes adultery.
No.
Which one is it? It's when you usually what?
I think there's a provision which says that any person who voluntarily vitiates the atmosphere.
It's about sex.
No?
No, pollution.
Any person who, while walking along the trail, voluntarily vitiates the atmosphere. And it makes it very bad for those in the surroundings.
It's an
Commits a
offense.
misdemeanor. I'm just passing things out anyhow. Now, you can't have such provisions which are. There are very many provisions which are colonial. So it's not that the law itself, English law, is a problem. The problem was English colonial law. And so there's a problem there, which certainly we need to look at and reform. But also a lot has happened in terms of changing the law. We, for example, have a codified contract act. Years ago, our contract law was all based off common law. We've codified many of the principles in the Contracts Act, and we'll interpret them depending on our circumstances as the years go.
I think it's interesting you say that the law and society have to be equal. They have to be at the same. They have to be at the same point. Yes. So I think if I could address this question to Mr. Pius, oftentimes as law students we feel that the law isn't really made by every member of society, but really by the members with the maybe strongest influence. So if the law is made, if laws are made by the members with the strongest influence, how can the law really represent our entire society?
And I'm going to have to be very careful answering this. I don't entirely agree that the law is necessarily made by a certain section of society. It may appear that way, but it shouldn't be that way. That's why, if you look at the lawmaking process, and I think maybe to that extent, many of us don't know what goes into the whole process of making laws. There are some which really we rush through because of certain obligations. But ordinarily, there is a consultative process, and as Elison was talking, I was remembering, we have a whole law reform commission where I worked for 10 years. They are required, to answer the question, to keep the law under constant review. Whether they are doing it or not, I think they've done it. Could they do better? I think so. But they're supposed to keep the law under constant review, constant study, to be able to point out that this provision is no longer relevant or this one is no longer relevant. So it is a requirement that when you're making the law, you must consult as widely as possible. Now, what's the practicality of saying, is everybody going to be involved in the lawmaking process? Then you'll have a problem. How long will you take? Because that means you have to go to my village, her village, your village, everywhere. So how much consultation? We always ask ourselves the question, how much consultation is enough consultation? But in that recent case in, well, it's not recent, the Tojukwatako case in Mbale, I think the judges tried to lay down a certain basic line on how much consultation should be done, especially when you're dealing with constitutional amendments, that you must consult and it must be demonstrable that you've consulted. Then if you look at the practice of environmental law, if you're going to legislate on the environment, you must consult as widely as possible. So one time when I was looking for a topic to study, I wanted to challenge this thinking that ignorance of the law is no defense. Because if these smart guys go and sit in parliament and pass a law in English, my grandmother in the village, and then you go and gazette it in an English gazette. In fact, there are some lawyers I probably who have never even touched a gazette.
It's possible.
Now, and you say once this thing is published, it becomes law and you are bound. So I said, is it fair to the villager, you know, who cannot speak English, did not go to school, the smallest thing they have is a radio, and that kind of thing. And I remember having a discussion with my professor, and the professor told me, you know, you cannot raise a problem without proposing a solution. So he asked, what would the solution be? Can you imagine if you took away that base of ignorance of the law is no defense? That means everybody who was accused of breaking the law,
just I didn't know.
I didn't know. So it is upon you to prove that I actually knew. But as society has evolved, when we started out...
So you abandoned the case study?
Yeah, for the time being. I'm still thinking about it.
Really?
Yes, about 15 years ago.
Okay.
But as society has evolved, and I've been in this space of lawmaking and law reform, there is a difference. You know, when they clear, you know, these days you can't do anything in hiding. Everything is in the open. Because they will just tweet about it, how and society catches up, and you know, we have the mobile phones, the WhatsApp. So even your guy, you know, in the corner who is not very busy, will read the WhatsApp. Hear about this guy did this or did that. So I think with communication, with infrastructure improving, the consultation process is getting better and better and better. Now you are having TV live, you know, so people are able to see what the debate is about, what people are talking about. So I don't think, for me, I don't think it's a problem. And maybe I'll just touch the other question you asked my colleagues. I think you asked Elison earlier. And I don't know, you are really in practice. I've noticed a trend that more and more we are quoting our own local cases than the foreign cases.
Yes.
Because I think our jurisprudence has grown.
Yes.
So maybe to allay your fears, it's not true that now we keep quoting English cases. In fact, many judgments now you will read are purely Ugandan cases, right? Yeah. So, and they are writing. We are waiting for Elison's book. And they are writing more. So they are growing the jurisprudence.
Yeah.
And my view, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's just how society evolves with time. And as we evolve, back to the point that was made earlier, does man serve the law or does the law serve man? Yeah. Unfortunately, the point of saying that, you know, society is moving faster than the law, by the very nature of the lawmaking process, society will move. And actually, the law is supposed to respond
to the space.
To the space that society has created. So definitely there has to be a space. Society must move. Then say, oh, the law no longer serves us. Let's now reform and change the law so that we're able to meet the expectations and aspirations. But you're right. Sometimes the law should be ahead. Yeah? Should be ahead, but not too far ahead. It's a balance, you know, like in telecoms. I remember when we were doing the law on computer misuse. The biggest challenge was that this space was changing so fast. It is difficult to catch up. So that's why when you read those laws, there were about 3 laws. They are drafted almost in general terms.
Yes.
Because we recognize that after passing the law today, technology would have progressed, you know, tomorrow, and then you'll not be able to catch up. Yeah.
The reference of the society, I think it's English. What I was talking about was English common law.
Common law, yes.
The English judges were saying that they are providing law as common law because the common law has its eternal youth. A society is moving when a problem comes, they interpret it in accordance with the. But of course, that's the problem with that system. It is like it's like witchcraft. Based off of the bias of the judge as opposed to the.
And that's why they probably don't have a written constitution. Although that's a debate as to whether they have one or not. And the other point you made is that quite a lot now we have codified the English common law into our own laws. And the constitutional article that you quoted, that we try to tailor it to our norms and our aspirations. I remember when we were reforming the Companies Act, it was very interesting. I think we reformed it, was it 2000? But we were using the 1985, I think, English Companies Law Act, because if you tried to come up to the level they are at now, you'll be talking about e-filing. You know, at that time you couldn't. But now you can see society has evolved in Uganda. You get judgments on WhatsApp, and it's okay.
But you know what they're saying about how the law is totally sometimes out of touch with the reality of the people. In a way, it's kind of true. In addition to, okay, fine, you're bringing it from abroad, but some things are just not applicable. What you tend to find in Uganda is people think common sense is the law. You find people arguing, and they, you know, you try arguing with like these local leaders, maybe the LC ones, or even if you've been someone to represent. And do not quote me, this is a safe place. If you have had to represent a client, say at the State House Land Division, where you're telling them the law and they're telling you, no, you took your client took someone's land, and you're like, they did not. According to the law, they have the protection of bona fide purchase of like, You're saying that if someone steals someone's land and then they said it, that, you know, common sense, of course, would mean, and you know, with other charters as well, like if you've sold the land, should go back to the original person. But we know that our land law, based on the terrain system, says that, you know, bona fide purchase has protection. You can only seek compensation, worst case scenario, compensation from the government. You understand? That is the law, but is that what society expects? So then you think, when they're arguing the common sense and the morals of African culture, and you're trying to say that is not the law. Really, by the time you leave, you are the enemy, you know? You are the enemy, you're the one trying to complicate, you're bringing gazi in the room, you know, so then you found that you and your law are viewed as, step aside, let us deal with this how we want to deal with it. I think also another problem, which is something they've talked about, is the lack of translation and breaking down the law for the local people. There is no law, and it is something that Uganda Law Society has tried to push, to say that, you know, some of these laws, like the Constitution, should be interpreted the same way the Bible, and you can't tell me it's not possible, because if the Bible can be interpreted in how many languages, why then don't we have the Constitution and all these laws in Uganda, in Runyachitara, in whatever it is? So somebody can buy it and just read it and say, okay, I'm going to buy it. Let me understand, because if you're saying ignorance of the law is no defense, then you've not made an attempt for me to get to know the law, because you've kept it in that, you know, in English, and it's not even widely available.
But to clarify on that, I think actually quite a bit has been done in terms of translating these laws into some of them they have. I think I know Law Reform Commission has done some work. And I think it's the Constitution. I think one of the roles of the Human Rights Commission is actually to translate, to have these laws available.
Have you come across a translated law?
Because you're not going to be looking for
No, we have.
I think we have to be very careful about that space. Because the assumption is that somebody who can't read English can read Uganda.
Yes.
I don't know whether that assumption is necessarily correct.
Even local languages.
Yeah, Uganda is a local language.
Okay, other local languages.
Other local languages, or Nyankore, whatever.
Yeah.
I can speak it, but
Doesn't follow that I can read
it
it.
doesn't necessarily mean I can read.
People read Bibles.
But why we do the translation is because then you are able to get the person who can read and write to go into that community and read from that text in their language. So I think if you get in touch with Law Reform Commission on Monday, you definitely get, I forget the versions they have prepared, but I think the Children's Act, definitely the Constitution has been translated into different languages. But as I said, you're not going to go looking for a Luo
Constitution.
But it's there.
I'm going to check because it is something I know Fiona Wall was top of her agenda as president of Uganda Society to try and get some of those laws translated. So if they've been done, probably
Some, not all, and I'm not saying they've done it.
I will call you on Monday if I can't find it. I'll pick one from your office because it is, it's even as we do a lot of pro bono, going out to communities and trying to sensitize them on the laws, and and it is always a challenge because it's a good thing because as lawyers you appear very intelligent when you're the only one who knows what's in the law. But then again, what you're saying about the law supposed to to serve society, not society to respect. It should serve us and help us to live good lives and not pollute the environment. So yes, back to you.
Talking about pollution of the environment, we have seen the East African crude oil pipeline. The French court has recently dismissed a case in France. And what is the way forward for law students and for the society at large concerning pollution and environmental in Uganda?
The East African crude oil pipeline is not a polluter.
There is going to be pollution though, so
there's still pollution.
Yeah.
So what was the question? What is that?
What's the way forward?
What's the way forward for students and the community after the French court dismissing the case?
Uganda is a sovereign country.
So I think you agree with me that even if the French court had ruled, whatever way it had ruled, Uganda is going ahead to do that project. The United Nations Declaration on Permanent Sovereignty over Natural Resources says that natural resources are utilized by the country, and even speaks of even foreign capital that comes into a country for the development of natural resources shall be used in accordance with the laws of the country where that capital comes, and even allows for expropriation of assets provided there is fair and adequate compensation in accordance with the laws. So the first mistake, in my opinion, was for somebody to think that through a similar process as judicial review, a tribunal of judges in a Paris court could exercise supervisory jurisdiction over decisions of the Petroleum Authority, of UNOC, and of the Republic of Uganda. And for me, as a starting point, the very concept of that case was extremely insulting. The very idea of that case was an idea of insult. It was an insult, and it was very good that that insult was dismissed with costs. Regarding the environment, there are two things that cannot coexist in harmony: the environment and poverty. The biggest cause
or environmental degradation is people reclaiming what they shouldn't reclaim. The cutting of trees, the reclaiming of swamps, the degradation of wetlands. All that is caused. Uganda, for example, will continue to use petroleum products. People talk about the East African crude oil pipeline as if they are putting, I see people, even Ugandans, protesting that they don't want Uganda to produce oil, as if they are moving on bicycles. The other day, recently, we had 9,000, 8,000 shilling pump prices. That high price of fuel in the world affects the poorest people the most. I promise you, Elon Musk does not care what the cost of a liter of fuel is for his private jet. If Bill Gates decides to fly for the global conference on malaria, the last thing on his mind is the cost of aviation fuel. But the woman in Chanamukak, who has no car and who has no bicycle, is hit harder by an increase in oil prices. An increase in fuel is a tax. And it's a tax that hits poorest people the hardest. You have Ugandan, and I'm going to say something about some people who say that we can't have this project here where they're running petrol stations. You cannot have a situation where we're treating that product as though it is divorced from reality. The reality is everybody who drives needs fuel in Uganda. So any Ugandan who doesn't want us to produce should stop driving. The guys who say this stuff, I appeared somewhere on a television station and a man told me that, you see, this oil is a curse. The other day I went to Nigeria. I told him, stop there. How do you think you went to Nigeria to study oil? You think that you were taken there by a donkey? It was fuel in your plane.
And a lot of it.
We're not talking about a different product. The one which took you to Nigeria. Without it, you would not have gone to Nigeria. So are we better off not utilizing it so that someone else can utilize it? I mean, you're talking about France. The other day, I think I even wrote an article recently. The other day, someone was in New York saying, stop pipeline. I asked him, why are you stopping the pipeline? He says, stop that pipeline. It's a climate bomb. It is going through communities and rivers. The Hudson River in New York has pipelines. The fellow who was talking was standing on top of a pipeline. Underneath where he was, there was a pipeline. And the colonial pipeline from Texas to New York is 8,500 kilometers. The man tells you EACOP is the longest pipeline in the world. He has a pipeline there where he's standing, the one he's standing on top of, is 8,500 kilometers, carrying 3 million barrels of oil. So the only way we can start a conversation, we cannot treat this conversation in isolation. We have to treat this as a global conversation. Those who are saying stop, first decommission. The European Parliament, anyway, we'll talk about this a bit later. The European Parliament in Brussels said Uganda stopped that pipeline on Monday. On Tuesday, the European Commission announced we have now funded the Baltic pipeline. It did not take them 24 hours to exercise the highest form of hypocrisy known to humanity. So, frankly speaking, I think that there is no choice between developing our resources and developing them. That's not a choice. That's a false choice. There is no neutrality on the development of Uganda. It's a false choice. So, I think the pollution is a pollution of poverty, and we need to ask ourselves, how do we solve this poverty problem? I mean, think about it. Look at floods, storms, weather. How many Chinese do you think died of weather in 1960? Chinese were dying. They just changed the policy one day that now we are going to leap forward. We are such a backward country, we shall have what do they call it, the great leap forward. Let's stop going food, we are going industrial. Like 10 million guys died of hunger. Just there, they just dropped down dead. Now, do you think that Chinese can die of floods? You know what causes weather to kill people? Weather only kills poor people. If you have money, you cannot die of weather. It has never happened. The lightning cannot strike State House. That now that there's a State House on Earth where the boss comes out and it's raining and there's lightning. How? But lightning can really kill you if you are just there chilling in your heart. You're just there in Kazu in your heart there, just chilling, waiting for the goat to come back. Lightning can shock you. So the whole point is that you have to look at economic emancipation if you're going to look at environmental protection. So the law students should not allow themselves to be used by people who are just, that word.
Maybe if I just could add on to that, if it's even possible. Maybe if I understood your question, I think you take comfort, in addition to what he has said, that Uganda is not oblivious to the dangers of environmental degradation. So to that extent, if you read the law that this guy is crafted in this space, they have put enough safeguards in the law to try and create that balance. So I know Elison has said, no, we must degrade this. The environment.
You know, for him, he doesn't care.
What is they have done a lot, actually more than many of these countries were telling us. So to make sure that as we exploit that natural resource, we also take care of the what? Of our environment. So you as a lawyer, as a young lawyer, as a student, you go and read and study those safeguards so that you are able to always and say, okay, here we said we are going to do this, and we do that.
Are we
doing what we said we were going to do? So I think the law has safeguards, which if you as a student, if you read, internalized, you are able to keep guiding society. That, you know, we have these safeguards, can we try to keep up with them? But certainly, as far as exploiting the natural resource,
we are going ahead.
We will have one of the lowest carbon emitting projects on Earth.
Yeah. So just go and study. Forget the hype.
So there's a vigilance plan.
It is there. There is more than enough in the instruments that have been passed.
I think so. I think that's what campaign to just paint it, but when you look at what the government has actually done, you know, in terms of compensation, they make it seem like, you know, we are doing things without a plan, but I totally agree with the gentleman. Like all factors, I know that a lot of research and comparison has been done with Norway, with all these countries, so contrary to what everyone thinks and painting us out like we are rolling out something we don't understand, all these safeguards are in place. Right from adequate compensation, although people finish their money, I don't know, married how many wives, and then now it's, you know, we finish the money, we need, I saw that, I was like, a second round, I don't know, they pushed us in places we don't like, but they compensated you, so, yeah, I totally agree with the gentleman.
And that's just to add, it is one of the carbon footprint of that project is lower than the carbon footprint on on most other projects in the world. It was actually the lowest carbon footprint in the entire Total Energies portfolio. It will, because we ban what they call flaring. When you produce gas, when you produce oil, it comes with gas. Most countries ban that gas. We will not ban it. We are instead going to turn it into liquefied petroleum gas, which is the gas you use for cooking in your house, those gas cylinders. So we'll turn to that and put it in those cylinders and let people have it. A lot of legal, the banning of flaring is in the law. It's illegal in Uganda to flare gas. It is, you're talking of vigilance plans. The environment and social impact assessment for EACOP and Tilenga and Kingfisher took more than 4 years to prepare. At the end of it, the government even seeking aid, I think from Norway or Netherlands, to come and read the thing and put more questions, having more than 10 public meetings. Someone then says that in Paris, there should be a regulator in Paris to that one. When Paris consumes 2 million barrels of oil per day, when the Eiffel Tower has more lights than all of Uganda.
I think that the common thread I had from all your answers was the fact that Europe is still so heavily, Uganda is heavily influenced by Europe. I think the mere fact that they thought they could, decide a case in France and it would be applied in Uganda shows that. So back to Mr. Elison when he was saying that, I think the plan is that Uganda will be making 250,000 barrels a day.
Roughly, yes.
Roughly, whereas Europe makes about 20 million barrels a day. So you can see the hypocrisy in that. But I would like to know, maybe one of the keys would be economic emancipation. Maybe that would help them see Africans as equals, not to be like decided for, but confident enough that we can make our own decisions. So in your, maybe we can start with Madame Claire.
I was hoping to skip this question. Continue.
In your opinion, we're coming to the end of our discussion. As Africa's future leaders, what would you say, how does Uganda, how does Africa proceed forward whilst, one, retaining its culture and its values? I know there's a lot right now in social media about African values compared to the West. So how do we progress whilst retaining our values? That's the question, yes.
Okay. There is always Elison who likes quoting.
I don't know if it's a song or something. There are many things where they attach Takulana.
You know what I mean, yeah? Like if you are poor, there's only so much you can do. There's even a whole song done on Olumbero Mwavu. Do you know what that even means? Olumbero Mwavu is like, what is Olumbe? Is the sickness, the plight, the stuff, Olumbero Mwavu, like it is so bad to be poor. The day you make appointments is the day it will rain. The rich man will take your wife. Like it is so bad to be poor. One of my goals in life and is
But anyways, I totally see what you're getting. It's about.
And we're talking to Africa leaders. We are bright enough. I like where this conversation has been. When you go to do a master's, when you meet with other people, they may be better in English and bluffing, but at the end of the day, you will make stronger points and stuff. As African leaders, future leaders, first of all, you need to consider what does that Africa future leader look like. You know, you have to address that. What do you look like? What are you going to need to be like in the next 20 years, for example? What does that leader look like? But on the other hand, while you're thinking about development, you have to develop your country, but use the resources that you have. Do not come and tell me, oh, you know what? That's why things like Bitcoin are giving people seriously. You know what I mean? People want to develop with, I don't know, I have a friend of mine, man, he almost died. He told me contemplated suicide. The market was what? Then the next day they woke up, things are, what are you doing in Bitcoin? He understood. I'm not saying I know it. I check it on my currency. I see the word, but my heart is not that strong to put all my resources in something that is such a foreign concept. Do you understand? When you can actually, there's so much money to be made in Uganda. I worked in London. I was like, what am I doing here? You know, I know they say women are not usually financially aggressive. Man, me. I love my money. Like, I am. Do not even tell me that what man does. You get what I mean? Like, there's no one who's going to become rich in London anyway. So, but for the Africa Future Leaders, definitely, you know, promote your country, love your country, and does not mean join patriotism clubs. You don't have to tell me to become patriotic. But I love.
We live a better world for our children than that which we found for ourselves. So you have to think in terms of progressing. Come, do your part, improve, you know. And that's why I like the conversations of improvement of, let's look at the years. Should we reduce them to 4? I think one of the questions was, do we have too many lawyers? When you reduce them, what does that mean? But you must determine that Africa must progress, but on its terms. I think it's the Chinese who said, I don't know whether it was Deng Xiaoping, one of the leaders, or was it Mao Zedong, as they were moving from communism, they said, okay, we are going to have capitalism, but with Chinese characteristics. I think that's what they said. We shall embrace capitalism, but with Chinese characteristics. In other words, I'm not saying, what's important to note is, and we're not painting the picture of everything Western is bad. No, not at all. Learn from what the others have done, and then customize them to your, but don't just lose your identity. You should never lose your identity. There is nothing bad about being African. There's everything beautiful about being African. But improve the lot of your people, and not of yourself as an individual, because you cannot live in an, and of course Elison has a wider license than me. He can say some things which I cannot say about letting me, cannot strike. But he is brutally honest that if you don't better yourself, somebody is going to eat you for lunch. So you improve yourself, and then I think it was clear. I've said on social media, it's very interesting how we have. I think there's something called self-hate. if you've noticed on the WhatsApp groups, bad news just travels everything. Chile, I think they say that Chile, Uganda, over. There's some phrase that we like using. The negativity in our society is incredible. And you know, if you've read a bit of some of these books, the more negative you are, you ingrain it in yourself. I think we should have a more positive outlook. Let's amplify the positive things. When Uganda land does well, it is never anywhere in the... Now, when Uganda, I mean, when the French court dismissed that case, yes, there was a bit of traffic on the social media, but it's not as much as if they had said, oh, the EACOP is bad. The whole thing would be on fire. Elison would be in the newsrooms trying to defend. But why don't we amplify the good things? Why do we hate ourselves? I think for me, the message is that we should love Africa, recognize that you cannot be on your own, don't be selfish. And of course that also leads to corruption. If you eat money for how do I be careful about this? Money of the hospital, the next time you are sick, the hospital, the next time you're sick,
yes,
and you cannot talk, your relatives, whoever is with you, is going to take you to that very hospital. You need to start thinking of, because I think when you keep using the words corruption, people don't bring it down. Just think of it that way. You are a leader, a local leader in your society. They gave you money to build a hospital. You decided instead to build a very good mansion. Now at night you're very ill, okay?
Yeah.
And the only place they can take you is that hospital clinic. Think about it. What do you want to find there when you have been taken there? Okay, that's how it works.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. So let's be more positive. I'm not saying don't criticize. Please do criticize us as much as you can, but in an objective, progressive way. You can also make fun, you know, on the bad things that happen, but let's amplify more, because I think these things are done deliberately, and that keeps Africa down.
Yes.
And then it's on the parting shot. Now in our office we are pushing back on these things of English law is better than Ugandan law, because if you felt that you can come to Uganda and make money in the Ugandan community,
Exactly.
you know, in the Ugandan setting, then you say, but if there's a dispute, no, Ugandan society, Ugandan laws are not good enough for me, but it was good enough for you to make their money from there. So why do you run to London? Why didn't you go and stay in London and make the money there? So we're trying to say, no, our laws are good enough. Because this whole thing, and you really have to get out of that mindset. There's nothing special. The rules of arbitration, okay, let's go and bring those arbitration rules to Kampala. Why must we go to London to arbitrate?
Exactly.
You know, so we are now asking that we have that conversation. This thing of saying yours is better than ours, we're asking how better is it? Tell us what is wrong with ours so that we can improve it to your standards. But when they keep telling you yours are wrong, and you also believe it, it's wrong. Sorry, I took a bit of time.
No, it's perfect. Thank you. I was going to bring it to a conclusion, but Delta and Zab had two burning questions. So we can start with Delta.
Yes, thank you very much. Mine is a question that I think would inclusively encompass even the postgraduate law students. Ms. Rukundo, you were talking of having, as Africa's future leaders, knowing what we should look like in the near future, and having perused through your profiles, at least, I must confess, at least there was a trace of the discipline. I think, Ms. Rukundo, by 2011, you were contemplating starting your own firm. And I think I've read Mr. Pius's few articles on legislative processes. And there he was, 14 years and over. working at Parliament, and Mr. Karuhanga equally shifted from very many careers. Actually, for him, I think I was sharing with her that it seemed whenever he got to the top, he found it boring that he had to
I never go to the top. You see what
So the question then would be, what would be, I don't know, the discernment or the judgmental point for a law student or even a young lawyer out there to now understand that it is now high time for me to specialize or categorize myself in this arena, really? That is my burning question, and I think I would like to have all the opinions from the three of you. Starting from Mr. Karuhanga.
Yeah. Okay, so what is the point at which a lawyer decides to specialize?
Yes.
In the practice of law and in the life of a lawyer, the real life starts a few years after the academic life. Lawyers become much better as they practice, because they learn. So I think you need to find what you're interested in and do the thing that interests you, and to sit with like-minded peers and see the thing that interests you, and also the thing that sometimes also is a good thing to find something that pays you.
Very important. Sorry.
But overall, I think really the student who goes to study law must understand that there is a lot of space in the profession.
Yes.
Personally, professionally, to be an advocate in the courts, to be an advisor, to be an NGO leader, to be a procurement person, to work in government, to work in the private sector, to work in the non-governmental organizations, to work in the charity sector, to work in the church. There's a church I know which really needs some help. So there's always space, a lot of space for lawyers. And I think what the lawyer has to understand is that the vocation of law and the practice of law is not just, it's also a business, but it's not just a business. It remains a calling. I remember that famous quote from a judge, I don't know which judge it was, that used to hang, that used to hang in Justice Chigawide's court. And used to always read it for us, that the advocate who comes to court, there's a higher retainer paid for the advocate in the cause of truth and justice. Because an advocate is, while he has a duty to his client, primarily, he is an officer of the court. He must not knowingly misstate the law or willfully misstate the facts, even if it be to his advantage. I think what a lawyer studying right now has to understand is, in the grand scheme of society, where do I fit to help move the place from point A to point A.5 or to point B? And I think when it comes to specializations, when it comes to, I think if you look at how your skills can help better the place. We are counselor. People say many bad things about us as a profession, but we are the only people who they bring their wills. Come on, they tell you, why don't you write for me my will? And then he tells you that he has children that only you at that moment know. And you write the will, and you keep the will, and the fellow dies, and you turn up, and you present it, and you say, the man has left the things to the guy you all don't know. And so you are the secret keeper. You are the advisor. You are the counselor. You are the pleader. In some instances, the intercessor before a tribunal. The man comes, he has committed a crime, and you're saying he's a first-time offender. I once found a man that committed a very bad crime, and someone was saying he's a first-time offender. So, yeah, that's my brief answer.
So my question would go to
three of you, when you look back at your career or life, what is that one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self, according to the wisdom you've acquired over the years?
We're still young. Come with what you think. We're just younger.
When you say that, it's actually funny. Whenever you hear, young lawyers, and there's this thing right now, I don't know if I want to call it a rift. Young lawyers and senior lawyers. What are you talking about? In a few years, you're going to be on this side. You understand? I think the major term would be to just say lawyers. It's gotten to a point even in law society where there's even a fee. Young lawyers are paying this, and you're like, there's already enough division. Why are you even adding on to the division? You understand? So when you say we are all young, really, a few years ago I would call myself young. Now I'm not so sure about that. But you got your question. I'm going to tie it in with the previous one. What can I say? What would I say to myself?
Piece of advice you'd give to your younger self.
A piece of advice I would give to my younger self. I also tie it in with questions here that you talked about success and stuff like that. I think for me, one major thing is to demand the best from yourself at all times. And you as a lawyer, even by being a lawyer, you're already doing that. But it's just that life will bash you along the way. You get all these friends, and then you also society pressures that you feel you have to fit in. You understand? It's like if you have a very expensive suit, like the suit that she's wearing, like white suit. You're not going to go to class in it on Monday, are you? You are not going to wear it every day, and it's shoe maybe, and you're like, this shoe is special for certain occasions. You wouldn't treat that shoe or whatever it is like ordinary wear and tear. I feel that I don't want to say law students are special, because I saw some comments there. I realized it's not just law students, but you fail to understand the treasure that you are, and therefore treat yourself in that way. By the virtue of the fact that you're a lawyer, first of all, becoming a lawyer was not, getting into law school, whichever law school it was not easy. Pre-entry, whatever it is, you're paying so much, and the future is bright. This one is just understating. I mean, you're in the right profession. If you stay the course, there is money to be made in law, and you are the capital. The beauty of, like how people have to look for capital, like our capital to start a shop. Here you're the capital. You understand? I'm sure some of you don't mislead people at home. You're still a law student, but I'm sure some of you are already making money from just that, and you even make more when you start working and you learn. You'll be like someone in a family meeting, say draft an agreement. You work with your stamp, please, whoever. Imagine just a stamp. Client said, I'm going back to law school. I've paid him. I'm like, please understand, I'm stamping your court documents before just a stamp. I'm like, oh yes, it's just a stamp. I invested in myself. I have stayed the course. I have invested in myself over the years. I didn't just stop at my law degree. I have added on. I have done my time. I worked in places where don't be too soft on yourself and say, I can't manage a law firm. What do you mean you can't manage a law firm? You understand? And then, even as you're working, at all times, have people who can guide you if you are, and you can succeed anywhere. I think people have fallen out of LDs. These days, I don't know if it's that bad, but you find if maybe 400 get in, maybe like 200 pass, and then the rest are there, you're like, okay, am I a lawyer, am I an advocate? People are left in the, and if you don't have somebody to sit you down and say, girl, you already have a law degree, you're already a lawyer, you're just not an advocate, get up. Do something else. You find people are there. I had to counsel someone who was contemplating suicide because they failed LDs. I'm like, are you mad? Like, you apply, go to the bank, man, you would win. You would get the job even before anybody else because, whoa, can you imagine a lawyer as a teller? And you would just do that if you're steady and consistent. Within 8 months, please, you'll be what? You will move in whatever career. But because of our training, which is a bit lacking in some things, you find somebody thinks this is the only road. So what I would tell myself is continue demanding excellence from yourself, work hard, and at whatever points in your life, allow yourself to evolve, don't, allow yourself to evolve. At what area do you see specialization? Seek as a mentor. Your boss especially, when you move past him taking out his anger on you and you don't know, not what those red flags, so that the boss does what, red flag, I'm out of here. When you move past those red flags and take time to listen to their journey and what has gotten them that far, you realize at what point do you then switch from, being a state attorney to then, okay, I want to try out working in government, okay, then I want to open my law firm, because entrepreneurship is not for everybody. It is not. Despite what everyone tells you, now I'm going to become a partner, man, but you can succeed anywhere. You can succeed anywhere. So I may not have a concrete answer for you as at what time do you change, but I worked, in a law firm for 4 years. I, took in bullshit, like my boss used to say, take it in. Those days, some months would be nice, then others you're like, whoa, where did I study law, right? But it's all part of the journey, and, success will come at all stages. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, what did they say? I associate myself with everything they have said. But maybe to combine the two, I think it was Dalton's question and Mr. Zabuga's. And from my personal experience, I think you need to deliberately early on decide what your journey is going to be like. What do you want to achieve? Okay, of course, Claire has talked about the money. It's good to have the money. Yeah, it's very, very, very important. But my experience has been that it's not necessarily that. I mean, we all don't have a straight jacket. But as Isha said, success is relative. But you need to have a compass, because life is like an ocean. You're in a boat. You cannot just be there, you don't know where. You must have some direction, right? True. So you have to have an objective. So you need to sit down, contemplate, and determine where you want to go. And as you're determining that, you have to be realistic. So you determine in 5 years, and I think Claire talked about, have those short wins and enjoy them, enjoy the successes. 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And I remember doing that in my, I think I did it in senior 2. But I think I was still too young. I planned my life up to 45 years. So now when I reach 45, I don't have a plan. Because it ended there. So you do that as early as possible. Be very clear in your mind, and it will help inform which direction you take. But of course you're not locking yourself up there. And as the two colleagues have said, what you need to also appreciate is in life, it's a competition. You know, there is a competition in the world. You know, how many students here?
6.
The reality is, now you seem to be at the same level. But you're never going to be the same in life. One of you is going to end up being the boss of the other, calling the other sir, madam, and that kind of thing. That's the reality of life. So you're always competing. And therefore, to fit into, you must determine where is my competitive advantage. Because you're going to churn out I don't know how many students now are coming out of law school.
So many.
Let's say 10,000.
Yeah.
And the question is, you want to go and work in Claire's law firm, all of you 10,000 people. What is it that is going to be so unique about you that she's going to say, no, of all these people, I want Zavga? So how have you prepared yourself to stand out? When we left law school, everybody was being commercial. I think it was the song. And I think at some point it became oil and gas. So I think now you have so many of them. So you have to sit back and ask, okay, everybody is doing commercial. So where is the gap? Yeah. Because there will always be a gap. And I'll tell you, whether you have a first class in commercial law and you are 10,000 of you, and I have what are the classes of degrees? I have upper second, but in AI, yeah, artificial intelligence. Today, most likely the AI guy who has specialized in that space is going to really make the $1 million before you. Okay, so you have to face the reality of life, that how do I compete in this world, and that will inform the specialization. By the time you're in university, I think you can be anything. Nobody should be smarter than you or the other. No. So you never depreciate yourself that it's only Claire who will be the best in class. You're also capable of being the best in class. So now that then, so you've done all that. But what have I found that has helped me? You must have values as an individual, even as you pursue money or whatever it is. You really must have the values. They'll help you. Be patient. Be patient.
Yes.
Don't rush to drive Elison's car.
You know?
Now at this level, give yourself some time.
They do drive better ones.
Yeah, and don't rush. Where are you running to? You make the money. It will be there. Just be patient, but I think it was Claire said, you really must. My experience I learned is studying, becoming a lawyer. Studying actually starts after university, because you really have to be on top of your game all the time.
Yes.
Because you have a very big client, then some guy was just left LDC, read the case that you did not read, flow as you in court. Then you see your client is beginning to ask the other lawyer, can I have a card? Can I have your card?
So true.
Yes. Simply because for you arrived and you sat down and said, now I'm a lawyer, let me make one. No. So you have to keep reading. And how many cases do you read every day? But, and as I told you at university, you have to find the balance. You also have to live, yeah. Go out with friends and, do what makes you happy, but you must come back and prepare yourself. So, and along that journey, you must be authentic. Be authentic, but above all, be honest. Be extremely honest. Take personal responsibility. Honesty may be a route that will take you, it will be a longer one to get where you get. But when you get there, what you get will be sustainable.
True.
Okay? So I think the honesty, the dependability, because you're going to work for someone. I don't know that you open your law firms immediately you start.
That is dangerous.
But because I think it was Zavga's question. Am I dependable as a lawyer or in whatever profession that you are in? Am I dependable? Because that dependability makes you the what? The money. So I think someone talked about being intentional and consistent, the confidentiality. I think Elison is still talking about when you have someone's chiram or the what's it called? The will. You don't go around saying, Samantha is very rich, I have, I'm the one with her will. The kind of work we do is this hand should not know what this hand is doing. That confidentiality, you really must be. So these are the values. I try to write a few of them down. The confidentiality, you continuously read, reinvent yourself. And then I think you touch friends. Make the right friends. Who are the right friends? Make friends with people who are better than you in the areas that you aspire to be good at. So if this guy, because there are some lawyers, when you have interacted with them, there's someone who always has the case that you need. Always. I don't know how they do it. Say, no, go and read this case. Make such friends.
Yes.
Okay? Make friends who inspire you, who are reliable. But the catch of that, of having a friend who gives you the cases, don't be a parasite, because that friend will also expect something from you, isn't it?
Yes.
So because of that, you also try to say, hey, when this guy asks me for a case, I should also be able to, So that helps you to, to go build yourself. But also, I don't know why we never talk about this. And I think it's important. You are young people. At some point, you're going to choose partners, right? Hopefully, to live your lives with. It's important you choose carefully. You can never be 100% sure of a person, but you must choose a person who is going to help you in your journey.
True.
And I think you touched on it when you just started. Someone who will understand when you say, I've just gotten instructions now, I'm going. You say, oh, can I bring your dinner to office? Of course, I'm exaggerating.
No, you're not exaggerating.
But that kind of person.
Set standards.
Yes. So you have to be careful, because it's a plan. You plan, and you choose. I know I'm taking a lot of time. So the partners you choose, the friends you choose, and the books you read. I think those flags, and I'm picking it from her. Those tapes, they're not red flags, but those values, if you have them, I really honestly believe so that you definitely succeed without a question. So you're already clever, you're in university, you're doing law, you have the brains. Now what you need to do is, how do you harness those brains? The values, to be able to get to where we started from. Where do I want to go? What do I want to do for society? Don't be selfish. The example I gave you of the hospital. They will take you to a hospital without window panes, without even a cannula. Why? Because you ate the money. So we live in society. Try to help people. For me, oftentimes I've been asked, don't you want to go and make money? Why do you stick to the public service? But there is a satisfaction you really get when you see that. And the beauty with it is, many people will not know that it was you. But in your secret space, you're like, wow, this is the impact I had. That kind of satisfaction. So that would be my very long statement on the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Pius. Maybe Mr. Elison can also share your advice to your younger self.
I agree with what has been said, that I really may have nothing useful to add. Maybe the amazing thing I would advise myself, even my current self. While you're thinking my younger self, my current self is in need of a lot of advice. And I would, but consistency, hard work. I think the values have really been set out. I don't think there's any need to reinvent the wheel. And I feel that advice which has happened is not just advice for students. I think it's advice for life. Always renew yourself, always learn, keep learning, keep growing. We live in a world where you become irrelevant very quickly, and as technology becomes much faster, the rate of irrelevancy becomes much faster. So you have to keep renewing yourself. Yeah.
True.
Okay, well, I think that on that note, we can end our discussion.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Mr. Pius. Thank you, Madam Claire. Thank you, Mr. Elison. Thank you to the student panel, and thank you to everyone at home for watching. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. Yeah. But you advise your current self.